Founded in 1925, the New York Giants have been one of the more historic franchises in the NFL. Phil Simms, Michael Strahan, Sam Huff, Eli Manning, and the list goes on and on. These are just a few players that have played for the Giants. This team has faced a lot of adversity in the past few years, ups and downs, twists and turns, but nonetheless, the Giants still have four Super Bowls to their name. And of course, we can't forget about the amazing plays that have happened in the franchise's history. The helmet catch, the sideline catch to Manningham. There's been a lot of memories that I've witnessed as a Giants fan myself. Now, as we head to 2022, which is, well, the season's almost here, and there's a lot to look forward to with the Giants, with the new coaching staff led by Brian Dable, a new GM with Joe Schoen, and with Daniel Jones, hopefully uh, attempting to take that leap to be the franchise quarterback for the Giants. We'll see what happens as we head towards this season. So, look, we don't know what's going to happen with the Giants. We don't know if they may be surprised of the NFL this year, or maybe they'll, be the same old Giants of years past where they're just mediocre or even below average. But nonetheless, it'll be exciting to see what happens as I welcome you to the Big Blue Brothers podcast. I'm your host, Nathan Nguyen. Now, see, before I continue, usually I'd be joined by my co-host Casey White, one of my good buddies who I usually host a podcast with, but he is not here today. But more on that later on in the show. So I'll be just riding solo today, but I'm looking forward to having some fun the next half hour or so, and talking about the Giants as training camp has already started for pretty much all 32 teams. As of yesterday, the Giants started on Tuesday, and they had their one of the live practices that we were able to see today. And I was looking at the videos through Twitter, thank God for social media, because I live in California, and of course the Giants are in New York. You get, the idea. Now I was looking at clips from different analysts and how things look with New York, and honestly, they look pretty good. So we'll talk about that as well. And some other topics I want to discuss include a position battle that we should look forward to with the Giants. Also, a player that might be on the chopping block before even training camp just barely started. But there's one player that you guys should look out for in terms of someone that may be cut or traded from Big Blue. And of course, there's one player that I believe has the most to prove with the Giants. And then we'll have Casey's comments as he's not here today, but he has a clip that I want to share with you guys. And we'll get your reaction and his reaction as well on the Giants this upcoming season. Now, training camp. Of course, any or every NFL's fans' dream here, as football is already almost here. The Hall of Fame game is coming up in early August between the Raiders and Jacksonville, as 90% of fans are likely gonna watch the first quarter or so and just turn off the TV. I don't know. Me personally, I'll watch a half or maybe the whole game. I just don't know. Yeah, but like football is back and we're all excited to see our favorite teams play. All 32 teams look completely different or relatively different, as to say. The Giants, like I said, look completely different up and down the roster. Of course, they still have Daniel Jones at quarterback, who was part of the Dave Gettleman era. But then again, Joe Schoen, the new GM, and Brian Dable, the new head coach, they have brought a new identity to this team that I haven't seen in a long, long time. There's a lot of team bonding. The coaches are getting along well with the team. It's like a new era of coaching. We know about the new media movement that Warriors forward Draymond Green is bringing uh, to the world, and I think the Giants, what they're doing is they're sort of catching up to what the NFL is moving towards, which is an analytics approach. And like, let's face it, we know about Dave Gettleman when he was watching film on the potential prospects he was going to draft. We saw him use like a Wii remote, I think it was what it was, or something like that, and it was just completely ridiculous to see. And I don't have the video on me, but if you look up Dave Gettleman and just type in like Wii, the Wii system, it's just ridiculous. The man used a Wii remote to watch film. So that's something we haven't seen Joe Schoen do because he's, a completely different guy who has adjusted well as he was part of the Buffalo Bills team. And he was very, let's just say, very good at picking prospects for the Buffalo Bills who just were almost in the Super Bowl. if not for the Chiefs knocking them out in the divisional round, which was a heck of a game to watch last season. Now, but Joe Schoen, like I said, brings a new identity to the team, as well as Brian Dable, a upbeat head coach who was the former offensive coordinator for the Buffalo Bills and helped Josh Allen develop into the quarterback that he is today. And honestly, I'm picking Josh Allen as my number one quarterback off the board in fantasy, but that's not here nor there. So hopefully Brian Dable does that with Daniel Jones, as we all hope. Daniel Jones is the answer. He's had a few rough years in the NFL since being drafted by the Giants 6 overall. That was the Dwayne Haskins, the Kyler Murray draft. Rest in peace to Dwayne Haskins, of course. So we'll see what happens with the Giants. But the first thing I want to address is a particular player that is potentially on the trading block or possibly might get released before the start of the season. And this guy is someone I had high hopes for. Was chosen in the fifth round a few years ago. A fast wide receiver, and he bonded well with Jones during his first season with the Giants. And I'm talking about Darius Slayton, the former prospect from Auburn University. Look, I had the stats in front of me, but I do want to say that it's never fun to see someone lose their job, right? And for a guy like Slayton, he was in some minds a steal because of how well he did during his rookie season. He had 8 touchdowns, 48 catches, 740 yards. Uh, he had what? Let's see, 15.4 yards per reception, which is great. And the season after that, he was still okay. He had 3 touchdowns, which is a major decrease from his rookie season, but he still averaged 15 yards per reception, which is fine. But I think it was more last season where kind of things fell off for Darius. Only had 2 touchdowns, 26 catches, 339 yards, averaged about 13 yards per reception, but he only had 26 of them. So, compared to the 48 and the 50 that he had during his first 2 seasons, it's a bit of a decrease for sure. And it doesn't help. The Giants selected Wandale Robinson, the rookie from Kentucky, in the second round this past draft, and the Giants still have Kenny Galladay from who was a free agent addition from the Lions. They still have Sterling Shepard. You still have Darius Tony, who was chosen last year in the first round by Dave Gettleman, and it feels like there's no room for Slayton. You could say he can fill in as the fourth or fifth wide receiver, but the Giants signed a Ricky James from who's a former member of the 49ers, and so on and so forth. So there's just no room for the 6'1" wide receiver from, formerly from Auburn. And I just believe that it's time to move on. This after his rookie season, like I said, things kind of fell off for him. And with the receiver room as full as it is, I just don't see Darius lasting in New York much longer. Now he could prove me wrong, and show out, but we we know about that drop he had against Washington last year that cost the Giants a potential win in Week 2 against the Commanders now, but they were the football team last year, which is a terrible name. It's still a terrible name, by the way. What would you call it? The Commanders? There's wasn't any other names that they could have chosen, but hey, that's not my my area of expertise. And look, I don't like the Commanders, the team or the name, but obviously I'm a Giants fan, and I'll just leave it at that. Now, back to the topic. Yeah, so Darius had that drop against the Commanders. If you don't know what I'm talking about, just look up Darius Slayton drop versus Washington, and you'll see how it wasn't Danny Dimes' fault at all. It was Mr. Slayton. And heading into this past offseason, the mini camps and whatnot, Darius was still struggling with the drops and just missed catches and whatnot. So I think he's kind of finished in New York, and maybe a change of scenery is needed. Maybe the Giants might get a sixth, seventh round pick. If anything, that's probably the best case scenario because I don't think a team's going to trade any more than a sixth or a seventh for this type of wide receiver who's struggling with drops. We saw that with Evan Ingram, who's now in Jacksonville, and there's a clip out there of him still struggling with catches with the Jaguars during training camp. So, good that the Giants move on from him. So Darius might be next as well. But yes, if he's gone, I don't think the Giants should be too worried. Like I said, you still have Galladay, you still have Shepard, you still have Tony, you still have Robinson, and I think the Giants are in good shape in terms of that, and hopefully Galladay sort of changed the narrative that he wasn't a wasted signing after his season last year didn't end so well, had no touchdowns whatsoever after being outstanding during his time in Detroit with Matthew Stafford. So we'll see what happens with Galladay, but yeah, Slayton is one guy I think that we should monitor to potentially be cut or traded. So if you have a Darius Slayton jersey, I recommend either I don't know selling it, getting rid of it, or possibly if you have American Express. This is not a sponsored post, by the way, but if you have an American Express, I believe you can exchange your jersey. You can correct me on that uh, if you guys know what I'm talking about. As we shift towards the next topic I want to discuss, which is a position battle that we all should monitor, and we just talked about Darius Slayton, and it's the wide receiver room. Look, the Giants selected Wan'Dale Robinson, as we all know, like I said, in the second round this past draft, I should say, and that kind of raises question marks. We know Galladay is going to be a number one wide receiver on the depth chart. Tony's probably number two, but is it going to be Robinson or Shepard in the slot? Because as we all know, Sterling Shepard has been a solid slot wide receiver with New York, and he has been one of the longest tenured Giants on this roster. And if you think about it, if fully healthy, he has been Daniel Jones's favorite target going back to last season. Shepard was a very reliable guy for his quarterback. So as we head towards this upcoming season, in my opinion, I just don't know if his spot is completely safe. I think he's battling an injury as of right now, and you factor in the selection of Robinson. Maybe Robinson might take a spot in the slot. Look, I'm not saying that these Shepard and or Robinson are going to get their playing time cut. Because let's be honest, based on what we've seen and based off the philosophy that the Giants are introducing to this team, it's that they want to get their playmakers involved at all costs. And we can't forget about Saquon Barkley, of course, who can catch passes out of the backfield. But with the selection of Robinson, the Giants believe that they can use it in the backfield as well. And that, with the pre-snap motion and whatnot, I think they know you know, what they're trying to do, and that's to create motion, create movement before the snap to sort of confuse defenders and go from there. Now, I do want to say that the Robinson pick at first was a bit questionable. I was surprised myself because there were other players on the board the Giants could have selected to address other positions on the field, but regardless, look, this is Joe Showens and Brian Dable's first, year as GM and head coach, and they saw something in Robinson, which is his ability to run after the catch, and he has electricity to, just create plays. And you can never have too many playmakers on the field at one time, because look, let's face it, there is no excuse for Daniel Jones, but we'll address that later on in the show. But I love Sterling Shepard. I don't want him to go. He was one of my favorite players when he was drafted from Oklahoma. And if you factor his injury history, it's not looking too good. So hopefully he does stay with the Giants. And but that's one position battle to watch. We know Galladay had a rough season last year. Can he sort of rejuvenate his past with Detroit, with the Giants this upcoming year? Darius Tony battled injuries last year. He was a first round pick. Can the Giants sort of get the playmaking that he used to get last year when he was healthy to replicate that also this upcoming season? Can Sterling Shepard stay healthy? Is Rondale Robinson the guy that the Giants were looking to draft this past year? Is he that guy? I should say. Darius Slayton, if he stays, is Darius able to sort of move past those drop issues and sort of become that steal of the draft that we were talking about a couple years ago? Is Richie James possibly a playmaker, not just a kick slash punt returner? It's just a lot of question marks with this receiving core. Of course, for the other 31 teams, we can say if they're healthy, then this. But with New York, it's a matter of look, can we sit here and say, are they a team whose receiving core is good enough to be at least average. Because the Giants haven't had a very stable wide receiving core since Odell Beckham Jr. was here. And you had Odell and Victor Cruz and Shepard, and it was a lot of fun watching those guys work on the field together at one time. And I'm not saying Kenny Galladay is a bad wide receiver. It's just a matter of can he move past last year and be that number one target for Daniel Jones. So that's in all the receiving core is one position to look out for. Uh, in terms of position battles, I should say, as we head towards the season. Can't even talk today. And last but not least, I do want to address a one player that has the most to prove this year. You could say it's Darius Tony because, like I said, he was a first round pick and whatnot, and we're all gonna sit here and say, okay, was he a wasted first round pick? Could the Giants select someone else? Uh, Look, I love Kadarius. He is electric, so hopefully he does stay healthy. But in my opinion, the player that has the most to prove is easily Daniel Jones. It's never easy at all to kind of fill in the shoes of a potential Hall of Famer and Eli Manning. Eli has given Giants fans so many outstanding years as the quarterback, and led by coach by the name of Tom Coughlin, as we all know, and then moving on to guys like Pat Shermer and Ben McAdoo, who treated him unfairly. I mean, if we all don't remember here as Giants fans, Mr. McAdoo benched Eli Manning for Geno Smith during a game against the Raiders a few years ago, and that didn't end up well with the Giants fans at all. Because, I mean, did we all really think Geno Smith was going to? Well, I think something cut off there, so my apologies for that. Some connection issues, so please forgive me for that. As I was continuing trying to say, look, Geno Smith is an average quarterback. I mean, he is now in Seattle, as we all know, and when he was called in to fill in to sort of replace Eli for a game against the Raiders, we all thought, wait a minute. So Geno Smith gives us a, I guess, more of a chance to win than Eli, and we all know what happened. The Raiders won that game, and Eli Manning was the quarterback next game after that. So not only did Ben McAdoo bench Eli, but he sort of ended his um, streak of games started consecutively. So obviously Ben McAdoo's gone. I think he's in Carolina now. So I mean, good for him. They still has a job, but regardless, you shouldn't have benched Eli in the first place. Now, Pat Shermer was an okay coach. And he's now in Denver as the one of the more. I think he was the quarterbacks coach or the offensive coordinator, one or the other. But I believe the Giants should have kept him as an offensive coordinator. But I'm glad that we have Mike Kafka now. I'll fill in that role as we speak. But Daniel Jones has gone through a lot. Injuries, a underperforming receiving core, a terrible offensive line. Not this year though, but I'm talking about, the year before. And just it was just terrible. He's gone through so much, and we'll get Casey's comments here in a second after I finish my point. But I get it. Giants fans were looking for someone to help us win games. And Jones, it seems like he's not the answer at times. He turns the ball over. He throws pointless interceptions. He can't hold on to the football. It's not. I'm not gonna say, you know, the blame is completely on the offensive line. That is not fair to them at all. But you gotta at least give your quarterback some time. And Jones hasn't had much time. It seems like once he gets the ball, the defense is already in his face, and he has to scramble or just take the sack, or so on and so forth. So when you think about it, the Giants, um, they sort of fixed that this offseason, and with the limited cap space that Dave Gettleman let Joe Schoen with, he was able to sign guys like a John Feliciano and Mark Lewinsky from the Colts. You drafted Evan Neal with one of the first round picks you had this past year. Uh, Look, the offensive line seems completely rebuilt. It seems like with a bunch of young talent and some solid pieces on that offensive line with experience, maybe this is a year that Jones has, or will have, I should say, a lot of time in the pocket to do what he can do. And we've seen what Jones can do when he's healthy and when he's on his game, which is he can run with the ball. Excuse the trip he had against the Washington football team a year or two ago, but we know he can run. We know he can throw the football. It's just a matter of can he continue, to sort of improve as a quarterback, I should say, and be that guy that can lead the Giants to wins on a consistent basis. And I'm not going to sit here and say the Giants are going to make the playoffs, despite the fact that we have the easiest schedule in the NFL. Where I'm not going to say that whatsoever with this team. We can't expect too much with Brian Dable being his first year as a head coach, and the Giants sort of bringing a new system to the whole team. And it's a matter of staying healthy for everyone on this roster. But there's a lot of young talent on this team, right? But we can't waste that if our quarterback is not stepping up to the challenge. Like I said, a new system is being brought in to New York, but we have to see something from Daniel Jones. We have to see improvement on pretty much everything: touchdowns, number of turnovers, so on and so forth. I'm pulling up the stats right now for Daniel Jones, so that way I can sort of give you guys an idea on sort of where he's been the past few years as he has been the starter. And I'm looking at it right now. Look, last year only had 10 touchdowns, 7 interceptions last year, but he was hurt for a certain amount of games. In 2020, had 11 touchdowns, but 10 interceptions. That's not really screaming, franchise quarterback numbers. He hasn't thrown for more than 3,000 yards since his rookie season. He was pretty close in 2020, but in 2021, he only threw for 2,400 yards, around that, number, I should say. So we need to see Jones sort of get to. I think for me, to put it simply, Jones needs to throw for at least 3,500 yards. That should be easy. You have Galladay, you have Shepard, you have Tony, you have Robinson, you have Barkley coming out of the backfield, and you also have a potential good tight end in Daniel Bellinger. And with that being said, you have targets, so you should be able to pass 3,500 yards pretty easy if you just stay healthy. I'm just saying. Touchdown wise, I expect around maybe 27, 28 touchdowns. I mean, that shouldn't be that hard. Hopefully, like I said, with the number of weapons that he has on the football field, during the past 2 seasons, he's had 21 touchdowns combined. So hopefully he improves on that. But like I said, around 27 to 28 touchdowns is what I expect from Jones, throwing wise. And, we can ignore the rushing game. But we all know he could run for first downs, whatnot. So hopefully he continues to do that this season. And interceptions, just keep it to a low. Don't go crazy. Turnover wise as well, just hold on to the football. Of course, every quarterback's going to have their strip fumbles and their interceptions that seem boneheaded and whatnot, but just keep it to a low. If he keeps it to a low, hopefully a realistic number to keep it at is around maybe 9, 10 interceptions. If he does that, I think that's what I consider as improvement for Daniel Jones. So he's one guy to look out for, and we'll just leave it at that. Like I said, Casey was not here today to join me as a co-host of mine. Hopefully, he'll be back tomorrow. We'll see what happens there. But nonetheless, I do want to say thank you to you guys for listening to the Big Blue Brothers podcast. We were formerly known as the Case and Nate podcast, but we are shifting towards to just focus on the Giants as we head towards this 2022 season. A little preview of what we have going on. We likely are going to, every week when the season starts, give you a game preview and then a game review after the game ends. Every Sunday or every Monday, depending on when the Giants play. I think they have a Thursday night game and then a Monday night game, one of each. I'm not exactly sure, but we'll look into that tomorrow. But like I said, a game preview every week, a game review every week. We're also going to have the NFL, weekly debate where we sort of explore what's going on with the other 31 teams in the NFL and just go from there. But before we end the show today, like I said, a big thank you to you all for listening. And Casey has some comments that he wants to make. He wasn't able to be here today, but he left me a video for you guys to listen to. So I'm gonna, go ahead and post it right now. But I'll make some closing remarks before we end the show today. But without further ado, here's Casey to have for some comments on the Giants and his expectations for the 2022 season.
Hey guys, it's Casey. As co-host of the Casey and Nate podcast, it's a privilege to be able to talk football with Nathan every week. With that being said, I'm excited for me and Nathan to start a new segment of our show, and none other than the Big Blue Brothers podcast, or more specifically, a New York Giants podcast. With that being said, let's get right into it. In our pilot episode, I thought it'd be pretty important to understand just why exactly you should tune into the New York Football Giants. For one, this team is filled with potential. Their new head coach, Brian Daboll, helped build the high-powered, pass-heavy offense over in Buffalo. Leaving his role as an offensive coordinator, you can expect the Giants to significantly improve their passing game, especially with newcomer Tyrod Taylor under center. Lacking in depth at the quarterback position, the Giants need their QB1 healthy if they want to succeed. If worse comes to worse and Tyrod goes down early in the season, backup quarterback Davis Webb should be able to take the reins until the Giants find a suitable candidate to replace him. Pro Bowl running back Saquon Barkley might see a slight dip in carries this season, but should still be able to surpass his 2-touchdown stat line from last year. As long as Daboll can get his team inside the 5-yard line, you can count on Saquon to improve New York's red zone scoring percentage from 44.74% last year to at least 46% this year. On the bright side, when your team has the lowest scoring percentage inside the red zone, you really can't go anywhere but up, right? But if things don't go according to plan, you have receivers like Sterling Shepard, Darius Slayton, Kenny Golladay, Darius Tony, and rookie Wendell Robinson to look forward to. Between the 5 of them, this elite core of wide receivers was able to put up a jaw-dropping 3 touchdowns last season. With a supporting cast like this one, it's safe to say that New York did the right thing when they focused on drafting defensive players this past April. Going back to what I said earlier, the Giants are filled to the brim with potential. When you're a top 4 team in the NFC East, you're bound to finish in the top 32 of the NFL. That's about as optimistic as I'll be for the New York Giants this season. The second reason why you should watch Big Blue is because they're perfect underdog story. Nobody is expecting much from this team, which makes them unpredictable. This team could win anywhere from 4 to 5 games this season. Nobody really knows. All jokes aside, the team's projection is at 7.5 wins. Every NFL team not named the New York Giants has one common goal: to win the Super Bowl. The Giants' goal this season is to not end up with the first overall pick in the 2023 NFL Draft. The fact that 8 wins is the goal for this team should tell you all you need to know about this roster. But if everything goes the way it's supposed to this season, I see New York winning at maybe 8 or 9 games. A lot needs to happen for this team to secure a wildcard spot. But to be completely honest with you, that's out of the Giants' control. The one thing that they can control, however, is how many W's they put in the win column this year. The last 3 games of the season will be the deciding factor of where the Giants watch the playoffs. If they win at least one of those games, they might have a chance, but it'll be tough. They play the Vikings in Week 16, the Colts in Week 17, and the Eagles in Week 18. They might stand a chance against their division rival, but the Vikings and Colts are out of the question. If they beat Philadelphia, they might watch the playoffs from the sideline of an NFL stadium. If they lose all 3 of those games, they'll be watching the playoffs from their couch. Leading up to the final 3-week stretch of the 2022 NFL regular season, the Giants have a chance at beating 8 different NFL teams. Those 8 teams are the Panthers in Week 2, Cowboys in Week 3, Bears in Week 4, Jaguars in Week 7, Seahawks in Week 8, Texans in Week 10, Lions in Week 11,